Good morning, everyone. If you're here in Bell Hall, please find a seat. My name is Andrea. My pronouns are she and her, and I am going to be leading us in song along with the rest of the band here. If you are joining us in Bell Hall on this sunny day, welcome. If you are joining us online now or in the future, welcome. We are happy you are with us. So we're going to start with song as we do every Sunday. So in body or in spirit, please rise as you are able. And let's sing some Turn, Turn, Turn.
To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal. A time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down. A time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late.
Please join us on the next song here. One of us. There we go.
If God had a name, what would it be, and would you call it to his face? If you were faced with him in all his glory,
We've got one more song in this song block. Please rise in body or in spirit and join us on Hail.
Hail all the lonely nights, hail all the tears you've cried, hail all that you've survived. Hail all the honesty, hail all that sets you free, hail all that you believe. When darkness comes, that's your chance to shine. When ripples roll, you rise. When darkness comes, shine all your light, so I can get my strength from you tonight. Hail every ounce of pain, hail every ounce of faith, hail every inch of grace. Hail every ounce of cheer, hail every truth we hear, hail all that we hold dear. When darkness comes, that's your chance to shine. When ripples roll, you rise. When darkness comes, shine all your light, so I can get my strength from you tonight. Hail all the honesty, hail all that sets you free. When darkness comes, that's your chance to shine. When ripples roll, you rise. When darkness comes, shine all your light, so I can get my strength from you tonight. When darkness comes, that's your chance to shine. When ripples roll, you rise. When darkness comes, shine all your light, so I can get my strength from you. I can get my strength from you. I can get my strength from you tonight.
Welcome to WellSprings. Whether you're joining us here in Bell Hall or online, we welcome you. My name is Josie Waldman. My pronouns are she and her, and I am so delighted to be serving as our worship leader this morning. Each week when we gather, we light this chalice as a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist heritage, but it is also a symbol of that light within each of us, that divine spark that we bring with us here today and take out into the world. We've asked Paige to light our chalice, and after she has done so, we will say the words that appear on the screen together. Thank you. And together we say, we light our chalice to celebrate the path lit before us, the warmth of kindness that shines from within us, and the radiance of wisdom that is shared between us and never goes out. Good morning. Our mission here at WellSprings is to be a community charged full with the charge of the soul. And something that has charged me full recently is serving on our stewardship ministry. I don't know, maybe some of you find that shocking. Seems like maybe stewardship ministry is one of those things that you do because somebody has to do it. And I have had less chargeful experiences with stewardship type ministries in my past. And I was worried when we started this ministry and I agreed to join. I was worried that it was going to be charge draining, and nothing could have been further from the truth. I I got to serve with an incredible group of people who are all passionate about nurturing the culture of generosity at WellSprings. You'll see some of the results of what we did at the annual meeting today, and there's more to come. This ministry is going to continue throughout the year. If you're interested in what the ministry does or in learning about what it takes to join our ministry, please feel free to reach out. Can you raise your hand if you're part of that ministry? Any of us would be happy to speak with you. This morning, I would especially like to welcome any newcomers. If this is your first or second time with us, we are so glad you're here. I hope you will fill out a connection card so you can learn more about us and start to introduce yourself too. If you're watching from home, there's a link to the online connection card in the description below the video. And any of you can fill out a connection card on your phone through the WellSprings app, or see any of our greeters this morning if you want to get connected. Can greeters? Carol and Ron. So if you need some help with connecting, see Carol and Ron. If you would like to interact with folks who are joining online this morning, there's a live chat available on YouTube. To access it, you will need a YouTube or Google account. Just sign in and then click the live chat button to say hello. Finally, you can always find more information about today's service as well as upcoming events and news through our WellSprings app, or by scanning the QR code that is available outside at the welcome table. We have a few pieces of news we want to highlight this weekend, and for that, I'll turn it over to our Membership and Communications Coordinator, Jessica Heichel.
Hi, WellSprings. My name is Jessica Heichel with your announcements for this week. Up first today is the congregational meeting. That's going to be happening right after service. So if you are here with us in person in Bell Hall, you can just stay put. And if you are watching online, this stream is the stream that's going to also broadcast the meeting. There will be a 15-minute break in between, enough time to grab a coffee, come back and join us, whether you are in person or online. And while it's true that you need to be a member to vote in a congregational meeting, you do not need to be a member to attend a congregational meeting. So we hope that everyone who can stay does. There's going to be pertinent information for everyone. As far as voting goes, look for an email coming out at some point after the meeting this afternoon. That will have a link that will take you to an online place where everyone can vote. Second announcement, if you haven't yet seen it, the Youth Bridge Ministry is arranging a new All Ages Connection event. It's a Reading Fight and Fills game coming up later this month. If you are interested in attending, there's information about it in today's order of service, and I will also put the link where you can read more and order tickets in the chat. Final announcement, Beth's ordination is coming up 2 weeks from today. If you have not yet made your RSVP, we ask you to do that as soon as you can. We have a lot of dedicated volunteers who are helping to plan this ordination ceremony, and it's helpful for them to know how many folks are coming. So the link to RSVP is in today's order of service, and I will also put that into the chat. Thanks, everyone, and I will see you next week.
At WellSprings, the foundation of all we do is rooted in the power of connection, of making space in our hearts and in our lives for each other. This is the part of our service where we honor that connection by greeting one another. We recognize our community's presence well beyond these walls. So feel free to take a moment now to connect and share a greeting in the live chat, or maybe to say hello in WellSprings Oasis, our private group on Facebook. For those here in Bell Hall, a reminder, please ask before hugging or approaching closely. And if you prefer to keep distance from others for any reason, just stay seated, and that'll be our cue to give you a friendly wave from afar. With gratitude for all the ways we might connect, please greet one another now. Your conversations at coffee hour, which will take place right here in this room after the service. It's been a long time since I've had to herd cats quite like this before. Thank you so much. Please feel free to continue these conversations briefly before we start our congregational meeting after the service. I invite you now into our time of generosity, an opportunity to express our gratitude for and commitment to the ways this spiritual community has an impact on all our lives. We sustain WellSprings now and into the future through our contributions. If you'd like, you can use your phone to give from anywhere. Just text WSprings to 73256. It's also easy and convenient to automate your giving on Realm. Our greeters will be bringing hats around for those who wish to donate by hand. You can also drop a check or cash donation into the box near the front doors on the welcome table. Thank you for all the ways your gifts support WellSprings. Our offering will now be gratefully received. Having shared energy between us and giving beyond us, let's take some time now to reground into the deep and soulful energy that's within. We do this by doing what is most simple and elemental in our lives. we take a breath, inhaling and exhaling without rush or hurry, breathing in and breathing out. There's nowhere else to go, nowhere else to be. So let us cultivate peace and experience presence together. As we prepare for our time of mindful silence, we follow these words from Thich Nhat Hanh. If we want to enter heaven on earth, we need only one conscious step and one conscious breath. Wherever it is that we are, whatever it is that we are doing, however it is that we are feeling, let us remember that peace and presence are always as close to us as is our own breath. May this be so for us this moment. May it be so for us this day. And may it be so for all of us in the days to come. And now I'd like to invite all our congregation's children to join the staff and volunteers in the back of the room for their time of fellowship in youth spirit. Grown-ups, please pick your children up from youth spirit after the service is over. And I guess you guys are ready. Enjoy our next song.
There was a Cape Town man, used to plow and sing. He loved his mule loved him. When the day got long, like it does about now, I'd hear him singing to his muley cow. Like this. Come on, you sweet old girl, I bet the whole damn world we're gonna make it yet to the end of the road. Singing hard times ain't gonna rule my mind. Hard times ain't gonna rule my mind. Hard times ain't gonna rule my mind no more. It's a mean old world, heavy in need. That big machine keeps on picking up speed. They were supping on tears, supping on wine. We all get to heaven in our own sweet time. So come on, you Asheville boys, turn up your old time noise. Kick till the dust So come on, you ragtime kings. Come on, you all, and sing. Pick up that dusty old horn and give it a blow. Singing hard times ain't gonna rule my mind. Hard times ain't gonna rule my mind. Hard times ain't gonna rule my mind no more. No more.
So I want to invite you to imagine something with me, if you will. You can even close your eyes if that helps you imagine. I want you to imagine you're waking up one morning, you're turning on the TV to watch the news, or you're opening the paper, or let's be real, you're picking up your phone, right? And you start seeing those push notifications, those headlines. And they're telling you that people are getting sick. They're telling you that there's a novel infection. It's never been seen before. It's contagious. It's showing up somewhere in Southeast Asia, but soon, within days, it seems, it's been discovered in other parts of the world too. And as you read on, you see that there is no cure or treatment yet. No one knows how to stop it, where it came from. And at first, there are these warnings that you see to wash your hands, to stay away from anyone who might be sick. But then, within a few days, things change so quickly, and soon stores are closing. Post offices and schools are shutting down, and there are quarantine orders from the government. And it almost seems like everything suddenly just came crashing down in a matter of days. All right, you can open your eyes and take a breath if you need to. Maybe you actually want to put a hand on your belly or your chest and just breathe and ground yourself for a moment, because how many of you felt that memory in your bodies? Yeah. Well, you're here now. None of that is happening anymore. And if you felt some kind of way listening to that scenario, it is because we lived through it. And we carry that memory with us now. It's okay if you still feel something when you think about that. It's okay if that still affects you. Fictional stories, the movies we watch, the TV shows that we stream, the novels that we read, they've always been around in part to help us process the real life experiences that we have. When we listen to or watch a story, we get to behold those experiences from a safe distance. And we get to watch or listen to someone else's experience of growing up, leaving home, falling in love, facing our fears, failing, grieving, discovering something new. We watch other people make it through those experiences, and we feel a little bit less alone. And that's part of why we do this every year here at WellSprings in the summer. Each year we dig into the stories that are part of our lives now, the contemporary stories that we do watch on our movie screens and our devices, and we find the meaning that they have for us and how they can help us make it through what's going on today. The description I gave you sounded familiar, but it's also the premise of the show that I'm preaching about today, The Last of Us on HBO. And this story is not subtle about what it's helping us make sense of, right? The elephant in the room as you tune in to The Last of Us is the recent coronavirus pandemic. The co-creators of the show, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, acknowledge that this is, of course, the elephant in the room for anyone watching this show right now on HBO. But interestingly, the COVID-19 pandemic did not inspire this show. The story that you see in The Last of Us got its start as a video game in 2013. Yeah, 10 years ago, long before any of us knew what a PCR test was, right? This story had already been created. And the video game's adaptation into an HBO series was even planned before the pandemic. HBO put out the press release announcing this program, I'm not making this up, in March of 2020. Yeah, how's that for a coincidence? Production was delayed, you might expect. And then by the time this series finally came to life, suddenly we all had this new touch point for this story, this new filter through which we were hearing and seeing it. The story is set in two parts, some during the initial outbreak that I described, but most of it is set 20 years after. So imagine 2040. That's sort of when this is set in our coronavirus metaphor. 2 decades after the initial outbreak of a fungal, not a viral, a fungal pandemic, just to make it extra gross, right? And the story, how many of you have seen it? I'm just curious. All right, about half. So the story intertwines this sort of typical scary plague outbreak story with another creepy horror movie element. Because you see, in The Last of Us, you don't die when you're infected. No, your body gets taken over by the fungus, and you become a sort of fungal zombie seeking fresh bodies to feed on. Yeah, see, so it could have been worse, guys. I will never forget how struck I was by this scene in the show between our two main characters, that is Joel on the right. Joel is a father who lost his teenage daughter on the initial outbreak day. And Ellie is a teenage girl born after the outbreak. They're now joined together as unlikely companions on a journey to leave what's called the Boston quarantine zone. And one day, as they are walking on this escape, Ellie asks Joel to describe how it all happened. And what hit me in the heart was the way Joel knew the dates. Friday night, he says, September 26, 2003. By Monday, everything was gone. I think I will always know that our last service at WellSprings pre-COVID was March 8th, 2020. And maybe you have dates that you know by heart. And you know what? Because of this story, because of the way Joel knew that information, I did feel a little bit less alone with my memory, with the memories that I carry in my body and in my heart from these last few years. Now, I will warn you, for those of you who haven't seen it, The Last of Us is gruesome. It is devastating at times. It is not, honestly, my typical cup of tea as entertainment goes, but it is masterful storytelling. At times, it is a beautiful, epic reckoning with the meaning of life itself when everything has fallen apart. The Buddhist nun Pema Chodron has a best-selling book by that title, When Things Fall Apart, where she reminds us that even if the whole world never actually collapses and we don't turn into fungal zombies, which knock on wood, right? even if that doesn't happen in our lifetime, we are all going to encounter at least one moment where it feels like things have fallen apart around us. When life as we know it stops, and we feel for a while like we are just trying to survive, and then to continue on, we have to discover the next form of our life that's waiting for us. We have to find a way to rediscover joy and connection alongside what's been lost and destroyed. The environment itself in this show, in The Last of Us, reminds us of that. There are all of these beautiful visuals all throughout the series of something that's sometimes called rewilding, right? This incredible natural beauty that's untamed, contrasted with the gruesomeness of this illness. In the show, there's this organization called FEDRA, the Federal Disaster Response Agency. They're kind of in charge, heavy on the kind of. They only barely have the ability to control things in these small quarantine zones that have been set up in cities across the country. And so most American cities are essentially returning to nature. If you go back one, this is what Boston looks like, downtown Boston in the show. And it made me think of places where we do already see this happening now. There are places in our own time that are abandoned, and we see how the earth, this larger system of life that holds and sustains us and regenerates us, begins to take places back. The next photo there is a picture that I took last summer. Any of you recognize it? Josie does. That makes sense because it's Josie's husband, Steve, who told me about this place. It's a place about 25 minutes up the road called Fricks Locks Village. And it was a town that was built about 200 years ago along the Schuylkill River's canal system when people were still using the river to transport coal from the mountains of Pennsylvania down to factories in places like Pottstown and Phoenixville. The overgrown, ruined building that you see behind me was once the home of the lock tender and his family, the family that lived in the town and managed its canal systems. But in 1969, PECO bought the land, all 18 acres of this village and more surrounding it, as part of their acquisition to build the Limerick power plant. You can see the cooling tower, if you go back one, Tony, yep. You see the cooling tower behind the building there. The land was so close to the power plant that it's no longer considered safe for people to live. And so beginning in the 1970s, every family was moved out of Fricks Locks Village. A whole little world came to an end. But the earth, that literal force of nature, endured. We have been talking this past month here at WellSprings about chaos and order. And I think this is an example of that dance between the two, right? The order that we know is not eternal. It can fall apart, often for reasons that are completely out of our control. And for a time after that order is swept away, it feels like there is nothing there but chaos and wilderness and disorientation. But eventually there is a new kind of order that emerges. A new way of living will take shape and start to organize itself. It might be a literal ecosystem like that. But it also might be, for us, a new way of working remotely, of balancing our time, a new way that we want to prioritize our relationships or think about our communities. It may feel like chaos for longer than we would like it to. But it does take some time for that new order to emerge. Like a forest emerges, right? They're not trees right away. There are these new shoots instead on the ground that live right alongside the destruction. In the show, The Last of Us, Ellie and Joel see this beginning to happen in one of my favorite scenes, one that is interestingly reproduced almost completely from the original video game. Now, all throughout this story, we're given examples of the way that tenderness can break through trauma. The way that people and places that find themselves literally closed off and shut down for protection can be found by the smallest glimmers of beauty or laughter or music or love. There's a sense of connection that keeps emerging throughout this story. And it's so fragile. It feels all the more unfathomable in this violent, devastated, fungal zombie world that they're in. So implausibly gentle as to be even more stunning that it's there, just marked by the incredible persistence of grace. These images are from the game, not the show, from a moment when Joel and Ellie find themselves at a real crossroads in a destroyed version of Salt Lake City. They've lost the trail of hope that led them there, and they wander into this abandoned building and discover that a pack of giraffes have taken over this empty sports field. Even in the game, this fast-paced action game, suddenly at this moment the gameplay stops, and you watch the leaves blowing in the wind, and these graceful giants meandering around a pond filled with rain. And like the father he is, like the father that he is slowly remembering he'll always be, despite his loss, Joel motions to Ellie that it's safe to come closer. And for a moment there is a tenderness that they can rest in the grace of this world, remembering how it feels to be connected, to be together, how it feels even in their broken and shattered world to love. When Craig Mazin, the show's co-creator, was selling his idea to HBO to make a show out of this video game, he described The Last of Us as a love story about how love makes people do terrible things. That's intriguing, right? I want to know more, but also, I admit, a little awkward to wrestle with that premise. Thinking of love as something that makes people do terrible things is strange for me, for us, right? Because we're famously sort of big fans of love here. Right? Just last week, Beth showed us this latest revision of our core Unitarian Universalist values with love right at the center, right? Craig Mazin says, love conquers all in another interview, and that's why it's dangerous. And yeah, love is powerful. We also talk here all the time about how love wins. How we believe in a capital L love, a love that is another name for God itself, the greatest force that there is. And that's exactly the show's point. Love is intense. It can make us protective or obsessive. It can obscure things we might otherwise honestly recognize as problems. It can cloud our good judgment, lead us to resist change with all our might, to make mistakes, to hurt each other or ourselves, all in the name of love. And perhaps it's not surprising then that one of the questions that keeps coming up as our denomination has been revising our core values and putting love at the center, one of the questions that people keep asking is, what definition are we using exactly for love? Is it a preference or a feeling? Is it an action or a discipline? Romantic love, kinship love, selfless love for humanity? Well, love has many shades and colors, right? I think many a future sermon will be preached on this subject. But in the new proposal, they do give you a simple one-sentence answer. Love, these authors say, is a force. Love is the power that holds us together. Love is the power that holds us together. This story, today's story, The Last of Us, shows us what it's like when love is the only thing left that's holding us together. In the most extreme conditions we can imagine, in some that we have almost lived through ourselves, right? When every other structure seems tenuous, when the law, when social conventions, when trust is evaporating. Love, like God, if you will, like nature, it does endure. And we see again how human beings always will grasp desperately at love. How that drive in us to be together, to not be alone, really is universal. It's there in every character in this story. It's even in Bill. Oh yeah, I can't not talk about Bill and Frank. If you watch one episode of The Last of Us, let it be episode 3, right? People who've seen it? Yes. Episode 3 is where we meet Bill and we hear about his story. And he is the perfect closing example of how love really can reform and reorder our lives. Bill is played by Nick Offerman, one of my absolute favorite characters in the story. But if I met Bill today, right? Think about pre-apocalypse 2003 Bill, people who've seen this show. In the real world, this afternoon, if I met Bill, I cannot imagine we would get along. Before the infection came, Bill was a survivalist with an underground bunker in his mother's basement, an enormous stockpile of firearms and guns, an elaborate surveillance system of cameras outside of his house. He knew how to hunt. He knew how to live off the grid. Now, when Ellie, the young girl who you remember was born after the outbreak, finally goes to Bill's house and sees this armored compound he's created, she says, "This guy was a genius." And he was, right? In the world of this show, Bill absolutely won in the end. But Bill is also an archetype in this story. He represents something to the extreme of what happens when we close ourselves off to survive. Bill says at one point, "I used to hate the world and I was happy when everyone died." But his next line is, "I was wrong." The most closed off character in body and soul and mind is still slowly captured. When nothing else is left for him, he is slowly embraced and softened, even him, by love. Our souls, all of us, our spirits, are probably still in some stage of rewilding right now. The fact that we still carry those memories in our bodies of what it was like not so long ago, the fact that we still feel ourselves emerging individually and collectively, we can still look around and see that much of the world around us is in a state of disrepair. So much has been lost or destroyed these past few years, and I'm not sure the trouble is past us. But it is also true that when we are most brokenhearted and fallen apart, when we are most in pieces, there are tender shoots that will find their way to the surface. Love can hurt, and it also can heal. Love is a creator and a destroyer of worlds. Like the Old Testament's Yahweh, like the Hindu Shiva, like the great gods of so many religions. Love is a creator and a destroyer. But we see it working all around us. We see it working through the power of nature and the power of our connections to each other, working to draw a new order out of the mess that remains. Life keeps on moving forward. And it's inviting you along. It's inviting all of us along right now. So may we continue to endure and survive. And may we tend those fresh and tender shoots wherever new forms of life are emerging for each of us. Amen. And may you live in blessing. I'll invite the band to join me back up on stage for their last song this morning. And I'll invite all of you to join me, if you will, in the spirit of prayer. Maybe take a rest, close your eyes, think about how glad you are that there are no fungal pandemics that we know of yet. And join me as we open ourselves up to something greater that is here. We don't necessarily need to name or label it to trust that we are held, that none of us gave birth to ourselves, that all of this life is a gift. And perhaps this morning, we can remember that life was given to us without our effort, without our striving. What other amazing gifts might be in store for us, purely as grace? May we see them when they show up. For these prayers I've spoken out loud, and for the prayers that all of us are carrying silently on our hearts this morning, we say amen.
Please rise in body or in spirit for our last song.
I'm on a one-way motorway. I'm on the one that drives you away and follows you back home.
I'm a street light shining. I'm the white light bright, shining bright, burning off and on.
It's times like these you learn to live again. It's times like these we give and give again. It's times like these we learn to love again.
It's times like these, time and time again.
Oh, I'm a new day rising. I'm a brand new sky to hang the stars tonight.
But I'm a little divided. Do I stay or run away and leave it all behind? Oh, I know.
It's times like these you learn to live again. It's times like these you give and give again. It's times like these we learn to love again.
It's times like these, time and time again. You make it better together, we make a better life. Because the pressure is everybody's every night and every day. So we pray and we will forever fight. We make it better together, we make a better life.
I'm on a one-way motorway. I'm the one that drives away you back home.
I'm a street light shining. I'm the white light blind and bright, burning off and on and on and on and on. It's times like these you learn to
this light may go out, but the source that sparks it is always within each of us. And together we say, as we release this flame from its faithful service today, we allow the spark in each of us to burn on, to warm our compassion, to fire our delight, to light our paths today, tomorrow, and always. Friends, may you always have light on your path. May you have light to help grow what is new and forming. And if you need an HBO Max password, come see me after the service. Let's put our hands together one more time. Please stick around for the congregational meeting. Guys, take us out.
All right. Is this on? Good. Ready? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, welcome to our annual congregational meeting. My name is Chris Grappi. I'm very honored to be up here as the Board of Trustees president and to serve with these wonderful people here up on the stage. We're going to go through this. We have a couple different, we have a decent number of slides and some items to discuss with everybody. When we were, at least for me, when I was thinking about today, what came up for me a lot was our Unitarian Universalist principle of supporting democracy, because in my mind, this is an exercise in supporting democracy, both within our congregation and within our larger community. And that's a strongly held value of mine. And so I'm really pleased to be able to stand up here and be part of that process here with our congregation. So if we want to go through the slides here, so this is us. Some of us got updated pictures and so forth, and that's a good thing. Next slide, please. For me, nobody else. All right. So what we're going to talk about today, I have a few remarks just to set the scene and be the MC for this. We're going to hear a stewardship update from Bill, Treasurer's report from Tiffany, the Executive Minister's report from Reverend Lee. Tony's going to talk about the FY 2024 goals, and Julie then will discuss the voting process, and we will then have a question and answer period. We hope to complete this in about an hour. We might go a little bit long, but we do want to aim to get there for about an hour. So, next slide. Same slide. Okay, so under the President's remarks, so a couple of things that we want to preview. If you go to the next slide, please. I want to talk about our congregational goals status for this current church year. You know, church year, for those of you who may or may not be familiar, goes from July 1 to June 30th. So it's a little different than January to December thing. So talk about our current goal status from July 1, 22 to June 30th, 2023. And I want to share with you what's charging me as we head into our upcoming church year. We have a lot of different highlights to share and a lot of good things to discuss this morning. And before we jump into the slides that show all the specific highlights, I want to preview a couple of things that's really charging me. One is the work of the Stewardship Committee Ministry that has done such a fantastic job with that, and I know Bill and Julie have been very involved with that, along with other folks, and we're going to name all those folks. But then there's other things that we've been doing throughout the year. Beth's ordination later this month is something I'm very much looking forward to. You may or may not be aware that when she graduated from Meadville recently, she was awarded the prize for excellence in preaching. I'm going to tell you, right? When I saw that, all I could say was, yeah, we knew that. Right? We have, that has been such a blessing to have her here with us. And so those are great things. And in general, so we're going to talk about some hard things today, because one of our goals as a board has been to be transparent with you about where we stand as a congregation. As a trustee member, we have a fiduciary responsibility for this congregation. It's a lot of responsibility and weight, to be honest, and we want to be transparent with everybody. And I will say this also, I am optimistic about our future, okay? I am optimistic about where we are and where we will be. You know, you may recall back in the fall, we were up here and we talked about a couple of things, and I put some numbers up on the screen like 2037 and 40 or 45,000, and folks rose to the challenge to think about what we would need to do in order to continue to have a strong foundation for the future. And I see the work that we're doing here is a good foundation for the future of WellSprings. All of us in this room, all of us enabled to live out our values as Unitarian Universalists in whatever form that takes us. I am totally jazzed next week about Pride. I hope to see folks there. I got a t-shirt just for this event, as you might notice. And some of us are going to be there, and if you're not able to join us, that's fine, but if you're able to join us, come by and say hello. I think us being out in the community is an incredible move. We have t-shirts, all sorts of things. So, next slide, though. All right, so I'm not going to talk about all these. So we wanted to be as comprehensive as possible, though, to make sure we hit all the different things. One of our goals was to help our community reconnect. You know, we came out of the pandemic where things had been different, as Lee referenced earlier today. I got to tell you, when Lee started the sermon, I started to get twitchy inside. I'm sure you did too. And I thought, why are we talking about an apocalypse? But okay. So we wanted to help our community reconnect, and I feel we have done that. We have reinvigorated our springboards with 2.0. The showing up against racism springboard has continued even in the pandemic. I participated in the pandemic. Folks have been able to do it since then as well. The 30 days of gratitude practice was beautiful. Our caring team, the Youth Bridge activities, the OWL program, these are great things that we have been able to come back and do again post-COVID. Next slide. Second goal was about showing up for our values by engaging our congregation in community-based justice work through new and existing local partnerships. We've done a lot with this as well, in addition to being a sponsor next week at Pride, participation in the Interfaith Action community that Lee has really been very much involved with. Our Heartworks team is robust and dynamic and doing a lot of different things with Kate's Casa, Better Days Ahead, St. Mary's, Shelter for Families. I mean, these are great works that folks do to live out their UU values. Our Justice Works programs, our Neighbors and Helpers message series last summer was fabulous. We had a t-shirt sale to be more visible in the community. These are all solid steps for our congregation. Next slide, please. So the last two goals, we're going to kind of put a placeholder in these because really these are related to our stewardship work and what we need to do moving forward. And we'll definitely be talking more in depth about that. Okay? And next slide, please. Next one. So, stewardship ministry, I want to make sure we give a big thank you to the folks who've been involved with this. Majid and Mary, Kathy, Bill and Julie, Carol and Josie. I am greatly appreciative of all the work that you've done as this stewardship ministry. So I applaud you. And now Bill's going to talk about the next part.
Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. I'm here as a member of the board, as a member of the committee, just to convey kind of the big picture in terms of the stewardship committee. They did a great job. This was the first year. They didn't have as much time as stewardship committees usually have. Next year, we're very positive about the fact that things will even improve beyond where they were this year because they have a much longer trajectory in terms of time to plan and to implement. There were two major goals, as you can see up here. The way we did the first goal, again, the committee worked very closely with the board, kind of separate but related. And they asked the board to, tell us, what do you need for next year to keep operating the way we have been this current year? And we looked at the numbers and we came up with an estimate of $265,000 from contributions, which far and away are the largest part of all of our income. The committee worked really hard, and as you can see in terms of what we achieved in that short period of time, 206,383 in pledges, 78% of the goal, again, very short time period, I think an excellent result for the first round. And we were using as our benchmark fiscal year 22, the prior year, since we didn't have complete data and didn't want to project out to the end of the current year. So it was above that year, and from what we're seeing now as we close in on the end of this year, we're in our last month, it looks like that will be ahead of what our contributions are. So very positive results from, again, a first-time effort. Next slide. Second goal was to increase member participation in pledging for a broader base of support. 71 households responded to the pledge drive, and 2/3 of them pledged amounts higher than their actual annual contributions in fiscal year 2022. Overall, 35% of pledging households make up 80% of total pledged. That is not an unusual, if you will, skewing of the contributions. Most Unitarian congregations and many congregations outside the Unitarian world have a heavy, substantial reliance on a relatively small percentage of the total giving units at the top to support the bulk of the contributions. The committee is really focused on expanding that more while recognizing that people have different incomes and resources and that there are multiple ways to give, including monetary and many non-monetary ways. And so it's one of the things they'll be working on. And the last slide, I believe, I think you can see that yourself. Again, we want to emphasize the board feels very positive about the ability of the committee, along with the congregation, to even outperform what happened in this first year. And just a reminder, if you've made a pledge, we look forward to you fulfilling it. A number of people are on set up on an automated basis. You have technically until the end of this fiscal year that we're about to start. The sooner the better. It's better for cash flow and paying things, so we appreciate that. Thanks again. Thanks to everybody here and on the committee. Thank you.
Do I need to do anything to this? Or can you tilt it? Okay, can you hear me? Yes. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, so before I start to talk about the financial results and as it pertains to treasurer's reporting, I do always like to remind people who are not familiar with looking at budgets that the goal of the budget is that these bars be equal. I don't always know if that's something that everybody knows, but we want to make sure that we're planning to spend as much as we actually are spending. It's really great when we have money that comes in that we weren't expecting, and so then that might make the bar go the other way. That's lovely, but the goal is to get these two bars as equal as possible, income and expenses. So it's important to note that we had planned for two things to impact the budget in a negative way this year. We received $16,000 less in ERTC funds, that's employee retention credits, this fiscal year than expected. So while we did receive the $16,508, that's the little yellow box you see there, that was, we called it money from the sky. But, so that we did receive $16,000 less. We had expected to get more than that. Also, we had planned to kick off the stewardship in November and had hoped for that increase in giving to be sustained from November on, and we only were able to kick off in March. Thus, we factored in that giving trends from the prior year were going to give us a deficit potentially this year of about $45,000. So knowing that, and if you read the treasurer's report, the great news is that it has not impacted the budget $45,000 negatively. We are at only $11,000 loss, which, while that is a loss and that is significant, it's not at all what we had expected. So that means that the increase in giving that we've seen from the stewardship campaign so far has really been a positive. If you go to the next slide. So I do encourage you all to read the treasurer's report when it comes out, if it's not something that you typically do. It's thrilling. But a note here that I want to just show you, you'll see there's a loan forgiveness and other grants column, okay? So that, you'll see, that's where the $16,508 ERTC is. And again, very worth noting, this will not repeat
next year. There are no more grants and funds and money from the sky that we know we have coming in. So that means that we start our next fiscal year with a $16,000 hole that we have to fill from contributions, our only really means for income. Okay, next slide. So here's where we talk about the budget for next year. Our fiscal year 2024 budget includes some very drastic measures for WellSprings. There are no more COVID relief programs or ERTC coming, and we've collected all of the money from the sky, as I've said. So we have decided as a board that we will be giving up our office space in Marchwood, and we will move to a P.O. box because this saves us on rent and fees. We have found some areas where we can switch email host providers and cloud storage providers to cut costs, and so we are doing so. We've reduced the number of paid guest speakers, so that will save us. We have cut the production arts part-time position as a way to help us save. Built into this plan are some fundraising efforts that are not really traditional for us. It builds in wish lists for supply needs and getting creative with guest speakers where we need to fill in with preaching. That's what we were willing to do. What we were not willing to do is to go back on our prior year goals of having fair wages for our staff. We looked at budgets that considered this. We looked at other drastic options where we did pay cuts, and fundamentally, we felt it was against our goals and our values. We believe in our stewardship committee, and we believe in all of you when you made the pledges for this year, and we feel like we owe it to WellSprings to, as Lee put it, go with a budget that might be held together with bubble gum and string, but we feel we really have some great momentum going, and we believe it's the right thing to do. So, what you see for fiscal year 2024 is a deficit budget of $17,000. This uses the unrestricted cash balance we have on hand. As of April 2023, that balance sits at about $61,000, which is just over 2 months cash at 2.5 months of cash at hand. Our rule of thumb financially is to keep that at 2.5 months of expenses. We mostly run, so what that will mean for fiscal year 2024 is that we will mostly run below that safety net. This is not new. WellSprings has run below that safety net before, so I want you all to know that. Like, this isn't the first time that we've ever dipped below that. For the period between 2018 and 2020, we were running below that range pretty regularly. And if we went back to 2015, we ran below that range for 9 out of 23 months, I believe it was. Quarters, yes, sorry, thank you, Chris. She keeps me straight. We plan to keep close tabs on all of this. It is our job as a board to review these financials every month when we meet. We promise to be transparent and vocal about our needs the congregation has. We know that we may need to reconsider these decisions quarterly, and we are prepared to do so to do what is best financially for the congregation. We encourage all of you to read the treasurer's report, to ask questions to any board member when you have ideas or thoughts that you think might be helpful, and we are here to listen. June 14th is the board meeting that we will vote on and finalize the fiscal year 2024 budget. If there are any comments or questions prior to that, please feel free. If you have them today, you can ask us, but if you think about all of this and come up with other questions, do feel free to use the email, the board email, and we can discuss any of that with you either at that point or in the board meeting that we have upcoming. Yes. The financials are in realm. Thanks.
Sure. You got it?
So the financials are in realm, and they are posted about a month afterwards. So when we meet for the board, we approve that treasurer's report, and then it gets posted. So if you are unsure of where to find the treasurer's report, it can be found in Realm. Is there a specific spot I should name? I am not the best Realm user. Okay. Within the congregational post. If you're having trouble, please just ask us and we'll get you to the right place.
Thank you. All right, Reverend Lee, come on for the executive ministry report. Thank you.
All right. Well, often I'm the one who's telling you about our prior year goals and our accomplishments, but Chris did a great job about that. And we also have access to some information and some data that we don't usually have this year from the denomination. So I wanted to spend a little bit of my time today sharing data from what's called the 2023 FACT survey. So this was a survey distributed to UU congregations in March and April, so it's very recent information. It was completed by about 600 congregations, which is just over half of the congregations, UU congregations in the country. And I went to a presentation for clergy by UUA staff. They gave us these slides and said that it was fine to share with all of you. So they started with this information here, which is about in-person attendance. So the left bar is 2018 data, and the right bar is current 2023. And it shows that in UU congregations, the median in-person attendance went from about 65 in 2018 to 50 in 2023. Now, on the next slide, I want to show you our WellSprings in-person attendance over that time span. So our median attendance in that top bar that you almost can't see off the top in 2018 was 161 people in person. And in 2023, our median attendance is 56 people in person. Yeah, you've seen that if you've been here, right? So we were doing much better than the average in 2018, and now we're only doing slightly better than the average. So this was their next slide in the UU-wide presentation. I know it's small in the room, so I'll tell you a little bit about what it is. On the left, they're showing you the big thing, obviously, that changed about attendance between 2018 and 2023. Online, right? It became an option. So that graph on the left, all they're showing you is the percentage of congregations that offered online church. It went from almost 0 in 2018 to almost 100%, right, in 2023. And then on the right, they're showing you the total combined attendance in person and online, which went from 88 combined attendance, which was mostly in person in 2018, to 93. So here is us in 2023, 94. That's our total combined attendance, the median. So again, we're slightly better than average. Let's zoom in on just that graph on the right. It's the next slide. You don't have to actually zoom. There you are. So this is showing you again, 2018 on the left, total combined attendance, all average of UU congregations, to 2023, and us on the right. It looks like a nice little straight line, right? But what actually happened in those 5 years was a lot more complicated. So show us the next slide. These are WellSprings numbers. Our average attendance in 2018 was 161, 2019, 134, 2020, 126. That was the first year we had a mix of in-person and online. All the way down here, 2021, 67. So that was the year that we were entirely online for the most part. It cut our attendance in half. 2022, the number is 77. And now, here we are again, 2023, 94. This is why I have gray hairs. 2021 was a really tough year for a lot of people and for a lot of reasons, right? And I checked the week-by-week data. There wasn't one single event that happened in 2021 where we suddenly dipped. It was throughout the year. So these two averages, those two data points tell a story, but the real story is a lot more like this, right? You see that faint blue line? It was a big dip, and it's coming back up. So this is a huge part, all of this context of why our board, our membership and communications coordinator, Jessica, and I decided that we wanted to try something new this year with our engagement survey, because when we disappeared from this room in person, it became hard to know who was still a part of our community and what the shape of our community looks like right now. There are still people coming back for the first time since 2018, 2019. There are people who walk in the doors 1 week and 3 weeks later they ask me if they can volunteer. So that is happening, but it's not the whole story, of course. So our survey was released last month. We got one more since then. We have 135 responses. I will say that I was hoping for more, and this was our first year doing this, so we learned some lessons. But part of what I was hoping to gather out of this survey was who some of these people are that we know follow us online. We have 641 YouTube subscribers. We have 400 some people who follow us on Instagram, almost 1,000 people following us on Facebook. So there's some people out there who I wanted to know who they were, and that 135 responses that we got was not quite the perfect picture that I hoped it would be. For example, there are 2-3 people in the room right now who I know didn't fill out the survey. Right, so just because someone didn't fill out the survey does not mean that they are not connected to us. Sometimes people just don't click things and they don't do things, even if you ask them 45 times. Thank you to everyone who did take the survey. We're all busy. And we also have all of these different online followers, and I was hoping to learn a bit more about who those people are. So we got a very small sample size of that. About 14% of our responses came from people who were, 19 people came from people who were either completely unknown to us previously, or people who Jessica and I basically assumed were disconnected, but actually are not. So we will adjust some things next year based on what we learned this year. But this is how the survey responses broke down. And this is in terms of how they hope to engage with us in the coming year. So it's probably hard to read. That top bar is our followers, friends, members, partners, and then we had an option for unsubscribe, which I think only 3 people wrote down. Altogether, there were 76 people who responded in either member or partner. Now again, we didn't get perfect data. Some people responded just for themselves, some responded just for their whole household, but that was 76 forms that we got back that said, yes, I'm a member, or I'm even more involved. 29 people responded as friends, 24 people responded as followers. On the next slide, you'll see here, again, part of why we wanted to do this was because we had not done any significant reevaluation of our membership count since the pandemic started. It didn't feel like the right time to tell people that they were no longer members because we hadn't seen them, because we didn't see any of you, right? So we had kept our number at the most recent certified number with the UUA. Every January, the denomination asks us to certify how many members do we have. We kept it at about 266 for 3 years. We just didn't change it. So with the survey data that we received, stewardship ministry met with Jessica and I so that we could talk about filling in anyone who pledged or who let us know through the pledge process that they were still connected to us. And then Jessica and I are going to probably do some more follow-up one-on-one to give us a new membership count, and I expect it's going to be about 160 individuals that we'll certify this year. So we have a real need for ongoing conversations about the meaning of membership, because we have a lot of opportunities now to not just think about who's in the room, right? We have a lot of different ways that we can connect with people and invite them to be a part of our community, and we are having an impact on people that I didn't even know about. When I got some of the comments, there were all these people saying, we watch online, we wish we lived closer. There's different ways that people are going to connect with us in the future that don't look like traditional membership, and we have to think about that as we think about how we count who we are and also how we think of who we are as a community. Okay, so numbers. Oh, last thing from the engagement survey, these are all of the ways that our community has been engaging with us. This list was too long, so I had to break it up into 2 slides. But from people who filled out the survey, the most popular thing by far, nearly everyone followed us online. That's that green bar at the top. It's slightly more common for people to have attended a service online than in person who filled out the survey. You can go to the next slide. Let's see, that dark blue line is using our message series guides that we put out, that Spiritual Development puts together. So people are using those to kind of grow their spirits at home, the resources that we put out along with the sermons. The yellow line is made a one-time gift, and the blue line is made a regular gift. So those look pretty good. And what else? Why I have gray hairs, yeah. So we've talked about that. We've been talking a lot about numbers. And all of these numbers and the journey that they have been on, that we have been on with them, that is why I have the gray hairs that I have from these past few years. The numbers do matter. We try not to talk about them too much because every number of an attendance count is a real human being who I love, who I am your minister, and it doesn't matter to me how many of you there are from that respect. And it also is good for us to have an accurate picture of who we are as a community and to see what has changed for us in the past few years and what direction we're heading in. So I do have gray hairs, but I also want to talk about why I have peace, because like Chris said earlier, I am not worried about our community because we have ridden this wave, literally, it was quite a wave through the decades so far, and I see us rediscovering our purpose now as a community. I think we are all remembering these days. As for many of us, we do walk into this room and we remember what it was like when there were 161 people in here, right? But we're remembering that we're not here to hit a certain number. That's not why we exist, right? That's just information. We're here to do ministry. And I see us finding these new ways to do ministry and being energized by them. And that is what's going to keep us going. And that's also why we matter. That's the impact that we have in each other's lives and in the wider community's life. So, the last two images that I will show you are also from that survey of all Unitarian Universalists. This is a question. It says, it's a statement actually, our congregation is emerging from the pandemic stronger than before. The responses are mixed. They're very mixed. They're honest. Congregations were all over the map on this one. 24.6% was the highest, and that's a somewhat agree. Here are the things that UU congregations across the country are most concerned about. It's a word cloud. Burnout, finances. Sound familiar? Attendance, decline, pandemic, pledges, volunteers, yes. Here are the strengths that those congregations recognize that we still have. Our values, transformation, justice, worship, innovation, music, mission, outreach, care, vibrant. We're not alone, right? And these last two slides are what I will leave you with, which is, again, that most congregations feel that they are identifying and embracing new opportunities for ministry since the pandemic. That skews very highly on the somewhat agree to strongly agree. And sort of a different way of asking a similar question. As a result of the pandemic, we're thinking in new ways about our mission. Also mostly agree. So we're in really good company. That's it for me.
I have the goals for congregation year 2024, and before I start, I just want to say, especially to anyone who doesn't know me, I have very poor eyesight, which explains the sunglasses. Oh, okay. It's not.
Just get closer, Tony.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry. I have bad eyes, which explains the sunglasses. Okay, so goal number 1, rebuild together. Commit our time to re-engage with our community in ways that make sense for us now. Explore how the groups, teams, and connections
Please hold.
I'm also really short.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to start over. Rebuild together. Commit our time to re-engage with our community in ways that make sense for us now. Explore how the groups, teams, and connections we foster can reach people in person and at a distance. Goal 2, become known for our values. Continue to create, support, show up, and deepen our relationships with local partners so that WellSprings will be recognized as a voice for inclusion, justice, and compassion in communities across Chester County. Goal 3, plan for our future. Build annual budgets that match our means as our stewardship program continues to grow, laying a foundation for the long-term sustainability of our congregation.
I'm going to handheld because I don't have papers. Can we advance the slides, please? So I'm Julie Choi. I'm currently the secretary for another less than a month. But we have a really important vote coming up. We need to vote for the re-election of 2 current board members, and then we are going to be adding a board member to replace me as I step down. So Bill Cabin, who you heard from earlier today, is up for re-election. He served his first 2-year term, and then he's up for another 2-year term, and then that's the maximum, and then he would step away. So you can read Bill's bio. I can tell you he's a very detail-oriented person. He's always asking the questions that some of us aren't thinking of. So he has been with WellSprings since 2016. He comes with his partner, Susan, and I know their grandchildren or her grandchildren. He currently teaches at NYU and Hunter, and he is a diehard Michigan fan. Don't hold that against him, but it's good to have people that are passionate about their schools. So moving on. Tony, which you just heard from, is also up for re-election. She has completed her first 2-year term and is up for another 2-year term. Tony and her family have been members since 2008. She lives with her family in Downingtown. She has a lot of great hobbies and a lot of pets, as you can see up here. And recently adopted Roxy the alpaca. So you might want to chat with Tony at some time about her new alpaca friend. And then finally, we have Sandra Tucker, who is running for her first 2-year term. I don't see her today, but most of you probably know her. She's very active in the congregation. She is the leader of our Heartworks team at the moment, has been a member since 2016. As I mentioned, she serves as a Heartworks team leader. She's also on the worship leader team. She's a retired elementary school teacher, and she likes to be a grandmother and is overall a great person. So those are the individuals that will be up for election. You will be receiving, if you are a member, and you do have to be a member in order to be able to vote, you will be receiving an email from WellSprings. Jessica's going to be sending that out at 12 noon today. And so please take the time to vote. We do need a quorum of members in order to have a valid vote. I don't know exactly what that number is, but well, I know it's 20% of our membership. So we do need everyone to vote, hopefully in the affirmative, but you can choose how you'd like to vote. And then that will be open for a week. So please, I'm going to go home and vote today so I don't forget about it. And that's it.
Thank you, Julie. I was supposed to come up and say something before you started. So I wanted to thank Julie is stepping down from the board this year. I want to make sure she's recognized for that. Woo! Thank you, Julie. I think Julie was one of the people I talked to when I was approached about being on the board. This was pre-COVID, so I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And it got really interesting.
Yeah.
But here we are. Okay, so if you have, we are now at the part where if you have questions, we're happy to entertain your questions. Or if you're watching remotely, email us a question, or if was there a system we set up for that?
In the chat.
Okay, it's in the chat, and somebody will let us know about that. And if you have questions afterwards or have comments, the board email is up on the screen, board@wellspringsuu.org. The other thing we were thinking is with the slideshow this afternoon, I'll post that on Realm so you all can see it in more detail and take time to view it. So thank you for being here. Happy to hear your questions. Yes. Yeah, please.
Thank you, everybody. I do have a question, but first, one comment, if I may, Bill, I just want to expand on something that Bill spoke about when he gave the stewardship update. He mentioned that in our pledge campaign for the next fiscal year that about 35% of the households make up 80% of the pledge amount. And that's not unusual. I just also like to raise the point that in the fiscal year that we were comparing to, that number was 20% of households provided 80% of the contribution support. So we are appreciably moving the needle in terms of involvement in the financial support of the congregation by more of the congregation. In terms of how that math happens. So I personally, as a member of the stewardship ministry, want to thank everyone who pledged and once again thank not only everyone who pledged, but also the 2/3 of those who pledged at a level that was an increase over their previous giving. This is really significant, and it's just another reason why we have everything to be optimistic about for our future. The question I had, and I think this will be for Reverend Lee. Where'd she go?
I'm right here.
Oh. You mentioned that in the analysis of the engagement survey and the numbers that you've arrived at for reporting to the UU on membership, you mentioned a number of, I think, 161. What does that represent in terms of households by comparison to what it was in previous years? She said roughly about 100 households.
Now I'm on, sorry. Yeah, and I'm being rough about this because we cut off the survey on Thursday, so we really had one meeting that Kathy was at where Jessica, Kathy, Mary, and I did some comparison of notes about who, based on stewardship and also my pastoral experiences, Jessica's membership experiences, who we think is still connected. So that number may go slightly up or down, but it's about 100 households, 160 individuals.
Thank you. Okay, so and from a stewardship perspective, that compares to in fiscal year 22, we were comparing with a number of giving units of 120. So yeah, we do see about a 20 household reduction versus that baseline. Okay. The other question I had was about the goals. It has first of all, props to the goals. Love the goals. Are there actions or specific activities or achievements or whatever that are attached to those goals yet, or is it too soon? I got a suggestion.
Well, let's hear your suggestion.
My suggestion is that we put our effort, and I don't know if there's money, but money where our mouth is on the two goals that speak to community involvement and inclusion by getting formally certified by the UU to be a welcoming congregation.
Thank you. Yeah, we can certainly talk more about that. We haven't, as a board, we have not had explicit discussions about what the benchmarks are for those goals, but that's a good idea. Thank you. Anybody want to add anything?
I would just say some of that will probably need input too from the ministries that they're tied to, so the ministries will help form the actions that go into that.
And I'll add one more thing, which is that our process on the staff is that we create the congregational goals with the board in the spring, and then over the summer, all of our staff sets annual goals for their work for the next year in line with what the congregational goals are. So our staff team, including myself, is thinking about how our roles contribute to meeting those goals.
Great. Other questions or, yes?
Y'all may know this is my personal passion, that we be a teaching congregation. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Beth. And we've provided, 4 ministers to our denomination here. I wanted to ask, how are we known as, or are we known as, a teaching congregation?
I'm almost looking at Beth to maybe help answer that question. I'll vamp for a minute while she thinks about whether or not she will. So we'll be hosting our 4th intern this year, formally. We have had some student ministers come and do projects with us. Technically, though, when you're becoming a UU minister, like Beth has been doing these past 2 years, there's a formal internship recognized by the UUA, which is the either 1-year full-time or 2-year part-time internship program. And we have seen Greg Pelly through to ordination. We've seen myself through to ordination. We've now seen Beth through to ordination. And Nick Sanchez will be arriving later this summer to be our 4th intern. So that's not that many. There are some UU congregations that have 20, 40, 60, 100 years of experience hosting interns. I will say that there are a number of things that make us probably an attractive internship site. The fact that we allow so much flexible work, because we don't even have an office anymore, and even when we did, we didn't require people to come to a building Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Our intern gets to essentially work in the field, visiting people, hosting groups, coming on Sundays. And flexible schedule is something a lot of people are looking for these days, so that's helpful for us. And also that we do still have a reputation in the denomination for being young. We are a 16-year-old congregation. One of the slides I didn't show you was demographics. It was ages of UU congregations. The average for UU congregations was to have about 50% of their membership 65 and older, and about 30% between the ages of 40 and 65. In our congregation, that's flipped. So that's, and we love everyone of every age, but that is something that makes us distinct, that our average age of membership is a little bit younger. And interns who are interested in kind of the future of our movement are interested in that because they see that that's different. I don't know if Beth wants to add anything. She may not.
So just adding on to that, I was at a vigil at First Unitarian Wilmington, and someone came up to me with the white hair and the whole thing and said, "So you're a new member?" I said, "No, I'm from WellSprings." They said, "Well, we understood that was a younger congregation." I said, "Yes."
That's a mic drop.
I'll just add this for the internship teaching congregation piece, that first of all, thank you all. It has been a joy to be your intern and to learn from you. Truly, I was saying to Lee, I accepted the internship 2 years ago this week, and holy cow. So I talk up WellSprings all the time. When the internship was posted, the internship position was posted, I shared it widely in my social media network for other UU seminarians from across the country. And so I will be, I'm not even joking about this, I will be your, what is the term? Your publicist, your ambassador, that's what I say, out in the wider world. But there are a few things in talking to seminarians that I think built for congregations to be a sustainable internship site, to be a teaching congregation, having a fund, because it's just unsustainable to ask anyone to do an internship for free. And so thank you all for committing to that, so that I could afford to be here and do this. And so I just want to say that if you want that, then, and again, in the overall budget and stewardship, to think that you have so much to offer to Unitarian Universalism's future. And so putting also the financial resources there to be a teaching congregation is important. And so I'll let you all know this. For my ordination in 2 weeks, it is very typical to to do an offering during the ordination, and the person who's getting ordained really gets to decide where that money will go. And so I've already determined that I would like at least 50% of what's taken that day to go into the internship fund to fund whoever is coming next. So that's one thing. But part of it, I will be your ambassador, and you all will continue to be as awesome as you are.
Thank you, Beth. Yep.
I apologize for not knowing the answer to my question. I feel like I, as well as many of us, have been a little disconnected since I left the board in 2020. And I know finances were strange over that time. And I apologize if this is an awkward question, but I think it's an important one. Since you started full-time, Reverend Lee, have you received a raise?
No.
And what year did you start full-time?
I believe I started full-time in 2019. I believe it was July 1st, 2019. So at that time, my compensation was increased to reflect that I was moving from three-quarter time to full-time.
Right.
Which is not the same thing as a raise, so no.
Right.
Oh, you know what? Also, I should say, it is not also the same thing as a raise, but we did give all of our staff, including me, a cost of living adjustment of 5% last year.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad to hear that. I am a big proponent of balanced budgets, and I support the decision to not decrease pay for our staff, including Reverend Lee. And I just want to make a push for having staff at a level of compensation that is fair should be a very important goal of ours, and the only way for us to achieve that is to increase giving.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks, Josie. I did want to make a comment about the budget, and Tiffany did a great job. And we do have a lot of optimism. The trends that we're seeing are excellent. But when the board votes this month on the budget, it's difficult to approve a budget knowing that we're approving a 17,000 deficit budget, and knowing that this is our one chance. Like, this cannot happen again. I mean, I know we'd like to have the 2.5 months, which actually, if you think about it, is a very small amount of reserves. Most other congregations, I took a little bit of not a deep dive, but looked at other UU congregations and what they were gathering as far as pledges. And most of the time, their pledges did not equal their expenses. So how do they make up the difference? Is they have very large endowments. I don't know a lot about endowments, but some of them were in the millions of dollars. We have 2.5 months of cash. When that's gone, it's gone. So I do, again, want to support what Josie said. Our budget it's very important for us to have, qualified staff that's paid well, but we do need to continue to increase our giving. We cannot have another year of, nearly $20,000 deficit. And I'm hopeful and very positive that we'll get that. But I do want to sort of bring a little bit of reality check that when we're voting, it's a difficult decision. And again, if you have any thoughts, please contact the board before we vote. And I also want to say it's been a pleasure being on the board. I'm not going to lie, it's been a hard, at least 3 years. My first year wasn't as involved, and we didn't have COVID, and we didn't have budget deficits. But it's been amazing to be on the board. I think we've worked together really well. a lot of times I've come to a meeting where I've had one opinion, and by the end, I've completely changed my mind because we all listen to each other, we all bring something different to the table, and we've been very good about keeping an open mind so that we somehow always come to some sort of a consensus, and it's an amazing feeling. So if you've been thinking about joining the board in the future, I would definitely say it's worthwhile.
Thank you, Julie. I agree 100%. I think it's been really valuable. We have a diverse range of viewpoints and ideas and thoughts, and we're always able to sit down, listen, talk to one another, hear one another deeply. And, we have 5 UUs on a board. That means there's going to be 7 opinions about something. At least. I hear you 100% about pay. And that's a goal. That's something we should be able to do. And what Julie said is accurate. We're optimistic, but we're also being realistic about what could occur down the line if things change for the bad or don't pan out the way we thought. We had a discussion internally about, like when Tiffany shared, should we share that we're closing the Marchwood office and one of the positions is no longer being filled, and those things. And we landed on, we need to be transparent that there's an impact for us having this shortfall of $70-some thousand, and that's one of those shortfalls. We're not homeless under like federal standards, but we don't have a mailing address the way we did before. We have a P.O. box. That's a difference. So it's serious, but we're optimistic as well. Thank you. Other questions? Did we get anything from the chat? Yeah.
I can walk up there. Obviously, we're not unique with our empty chairs. Other congregations, I'm curious if Boston or any other congregations have come up with creative ideas how to get more hugs every Sunday morning. I was thinking of renting a bus and picking people up, but that didn't work out. Any ideas that you've heard?
Thanks, Ron. I like the bus.
I don't know that transportation is the issue, though,
Right. Yes.
It's interesting, Ron. I mainly know this through the lens of colleagues and ministers and how they're responding. I would say it's a small minority of UU ministers that have really pushed hard on come back to the building. I would say that it's worked for some and it's not worked for others. And I think the majority of UU ministers are trying to do something more like adapt to the new reality that people will find their connection with their spiritual community perhaps without coming to the building every week like they used to, now that we've made it available to have another option. And there are pluses and minuses to that. There are people who are still connected to our community who get to worship with us every Sunday who wouldn't otherwise because they're far away or they're sick. But it also means we're not going to have you fill out an application that says you only get our live stream link if you tell us that you're sick or you're not here, right? It also means that people who aren't morning people who can't get their kids out the door in time, people who Sunday morning isn't the best time for them, but they watch our service on Wednesday nights over dinner with their families, that they have access as well. And it changes the experience for those of us who love being here. So I guess the best thing I can ask us all to do now is to remember to have some imagination about what you don't see and the impact that our community is still having, even if you don't see it in the room on Sunday mornings. I do believe that by opening these gates to allow people to access us in different ways, I think that's the only way to have more people come back in the building. Because just saying you have to be here and that's the only way puts up that barrier to people that says, well, I don't know if I'm going to like it there. I don't know if I want to get out of my bed in the morning and come visit. if people are watching from home and they see the live music and they see the experience of the people in the room, my hope is that that's what draws them in to say, I wonder what it's like to go there in person, because they actually get to see what's happening here. But I'm also going to be very honest with you that I don't know the answer. We are in a new world, and I don't know if this is the right strategy. I don't believe that pretending that the last 3 years didn't happen and returning to an only in-person experience and saying you have to come, I just don't think that that's going to be the way that congregations are going to succeed, because it's not the reality of the world that we're in now. No, yeah, so Ron's asking if UU headquarters basically is putting out advice on this. They're encouraging us to do this work of adaptive, kind of trying to figure out, okay, how do we live into this new universe where now people can experience church online? They're not, I would say the word from Boston was what was in that presentation, which is to say, look at how the average attendance has actually grown when you combine in-person and online attendance. They haven't said much about how does it change the experience for the people in the room. And I think that that's an honest grief that we need to acknowledge and figure out what it means to us to come here, and figure out what it means to us to have other humans in the room with us in body. Maybe some of that is about thinking about your friends who you miss and inviting them to come back to church with you, and thinking in new ways over this next year about how we can create more in-person opportunities to connect that might draw people back, because it adds something to just the worship experience that they can now get online. You know, maybe more coffees after service, maybe more social gatherings that are connected to the building. I don't know.
I just want to comment too. So it does tie into one of the goals about being more visible in the community and going to different events and things like that. One of the ideas with the T-shirts, for example, was having a WellSprings T-shirt that you would wear out when you're doing these things. So if you're at Pride, if you're on the Heartworks group, if you're at a Justice Works event, to get our name out in the community locally, so people who might have never heard of us hear about us. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to add, or all right. Yeah.
I'm sure this is a weird idea. Would it be helpful visually with people seeing here if we would sit forward and fill out more of these chairs so that when they're picturing us, it looks like there's people here to come and meet?
I mean, the people on the stage always want that as well. We don't want to see you all the way back out there. We want you up close.
Okay.
And this is the moral of that whole story, right? Is that people have different needs and preferences, and we're able to meet more of those than we've ever been before. But it also means that now our congregation has been diluted because we're not forcing everyone to do the same thing. So we're seeing people engaging in different ways. Again, my hope is that by offering more options, all boats rise eventually, right? It takes some time, as we saw in that graph.
I just want to voice the opinion that it's consistent with our values that we continue to offer those options. I think that one of the things that, if we were paying attention during the pandemic, a lot of us learned is that what the pandemic did to those of us who were used to being out and about and engaging in person was enable services which were valuable to people with disabilities, people who were homebound, people who had social anxiety, people, any number of reasons, didn't have childcare, whatever. And so the loss of those services is not just a loss to those of us who have the capability to be out and about, but more importantly, it's a loss to people who need them regardless of pandemics. So I think it's important to our values to, now that we know that we can be inclusive of those people, let's keep being inclusive of those people. And we can do that on Sunday morning, and we can do it in our small groups, and we can do it in our teams and in service opportunities. We had and have a member of our stewardship ministry who is always a virtual member, always with us on Zoom, never in person, and is every bit as valuable a member of our ministry team. The question I wanted to ask was, I grok on the demographics and the data. In that data from the UU and how we map to the data from the UU, how do we identify our attendance online? Like, how do we know how many people are attending online?
So YouTube, which is how we stream our service, gives us the ability to go look in the back end at analytics. And there were different philosophies about how to count your online attendance as soon as the pandemic started. We didn't do Zoom services, which a lot of congregations did, so that gives you a very clear ability to see who's on Zoom. What we decided to do was we look after the service, and it's actually Beth Trandall, our office coordinator, who keeps the data, and we look for how many people viewed the service between 10 and 11 a.m. So that's our approximation of online attendance. Imperfect, somebody who watches at noon still attended, right? But that's just the most reasonable way we've been able to figure it out, because otherwise some of our services have 300, 400, 500 views, which is wonderful, but to say that 500 people attended that service doesn't quite feel right, so. You're messing up our data, sorry. But I'm glad that you're participating in the chat. So Kathy asked, what about people like Kathy who sit in Bell Hall but still get on the chat so that you can talk to people? Yeah, there's probably 3 or 4 of you every Sunday. It's a little bit of a, margin of error, yeah. Josh?
Yep. Yeah, so the comment was, if I heard it correctly, there might be multiple people at home watching the same YouTube feed as well, and they might count. That's good. I've logged in from Bell Hall as well, just to comment, so I guess it happens. Great. Other questions or anything from the chat online? Nothing? It's always good to have wait time. Anybody from the board? Final? Good? Yes. Thank you for attending. If you have follow-up questions afterwards, our email is here. All 5 of us see that email, so please share with us your thoughts. Thank you. Nice to see you all. I love you all. Be well.